There we go. And like I said before, I'm going to have to make sure I'm looking at you and not the camera.
That's okay.
So anyway.
And I'll look at you too. I'm really bad at looking like I've done some, camera stuff, and I just.
All right. Doing this, first of all, because I'm interviewing Andrea McCook to honor your journey before, during, and after our years in the congregation. And from our conversations, I know just part of what an interesting life you've had. I want to know more. more. And our congregation sees you on Sunday morning in the choir, and the joy on your face is just radiates. Just radiates. I said palpable, but I was edited by someone I love at the house. Anyway. And some of us have seen you in the director's chair, both at Flagler and at Limelight, and in things that you've done. So that's just another piece of who you are. And now, ding, 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 you're going to seminary.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Surprise.
So the question would be, why this? Mm-hmm. Why now? Mm. And as I've said to Richard Dow, my beloved, have you lost your mind? It's the third part of that first question.
I'm asking myself that.
So I would just like for you to take a few minutes and take us along with you on your journey.
Okay. There's a lot. Yeah. Let me start with the last part of it first, in terms of the call, and I can try to keep that condensed. Yes, I've been teaching for over 30 years at Flagler College. I started in 91, and I had my whole history there. I loved being a teacher. I loved being a part of the theater program, building the theater program, building Flagler College. I've been very fortunate in my time there to have positions where I could really contribute to both of those. So I was a department chair, I was a school dean, and served my terms. They were each 3-year terms. And then when my last term ended as dean, I stepped back into the faculty position, and I've just been a faculty member for the last, since 2021, so 4 years. And it's been great. I love not having all that administrative responsibility. And I'm getting close to retirement age. I didn't want to stay at Flagler longer. I mean, I could continue teaching for another 10 years if I wanted, but I really felt I would be hindering the program there. And there are a lot of younger voices and ideas that are there, and they need to bring in somebody who can teach what I teach, which is performance and directing, who's, got that same fresh ideas, enthusiasm, and so on. I've done my part. I've done what I set out to do. So my time there is done, and and I'm okay with that. So I started thinking, okay, so I'll hit full Social Security in a couple of years. That would be the time to retire. Yada yada. And then it was okay. Then what? I thought, well, I could direct part-time. I could teach part-time, and then I thought, no, Andrea, you're going to end up just sitting on the couch, gaining 100 pounds, watching TV, Lord knows what. You need something to do. And it was over a period of a number of months, about 6 months, and there were a number of things that happened, including a play I directed, which had to do with religion, called Storefront Church. And I'm not going to go into the particulars of all of that, but slowly the seeds just started getting planted. One of the actors in that play was actually considering the priesthood, and he went to visit a seminary. And I remember, that was during our rehearsal period, and I remember when he did that, and this was 2 years ago, in November, and something sparked in me.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, I'm kind of jealous of that, envious, He decided not to go through with it, but something got triggered.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about my gifts, what I've been blessed with, the experiences that I've had. And it all just started to kind of come together, little by little. And I just got like a whim one day, and I was like, what would happen? Wouldn't that be kind of fun?
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, and so I started thinking, what would that be like, being a pastor in a church, of a congregation? And I asked that question to myself, and I thought, well, I know what that's like.
Yeah.
My father's was a minister before he passed away. He was in the pulpit until he was 85. He passed away at the age of 87. He was also a professor of church history at his doctorate. He was a theologian, well respected. So I know that life really well. I know the ups and downs of a congregation. I've served on church council. I was church council president here. We had issues, we had problems. I know how hard congregations can be. So as I started thinking, wouldn't that be kind of interesting? I thought, yeah, and you also know what to expect.
Yeah, true.
And then I thought, and you also know how to be an administrator, you know how to encourage people to get involved with things, you know, and so on. I thought, yeah, I've actually got the life experience, I think, that prepares you for this. What I don't have is the training. I don't have the theological training. I don't understand, you know, not that I don't understand. I grew up with it around the table with my father, all through my life. You know, I mean, Bonhoeffer and Tillich were like names that I knew when I was 10.
Wow.
You know, now what exactly they said, maybe not so much, but I grew up with this. I grew up with my mom and my dad discussing, you know, the Episcopal Church versus the Lutheran Church. My mom had been an Episcopalian when they got married, and my father made her convert and made her go to confirmation class. You know, this was early in the 60s. He's like, no, you've got to do it. You know, he's a good German guy. You know, he's like, no, you must do it this way, you know. So that's what I was raised with. And so it just kind of started growing a little bit more. I meant to keep this section short, so I'll try to contain it. But I just started thinking, and over a couple of months, you know, I talked to myself, talked to God a lot, prayed. And then finally I thought, well, I started then Googling seminary a little bit, and I thought, well, how the heck are you going to get training? I actually talked to Christina Blanchek, and she said, oh, someone had mentioned to her the possibility of online. And I thought, oh, wow, well, yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? Well, maybe that could happen. I don't know. Then I started looking at seminaries and the cost, and I thought, oh, Lord, I can't afford that. And then I was like, you know, you're old, you're 64, can you do this? So those were the three obstacles, you know, age, ability to go to seminary, and cost. And so I brought it up to my husband one day, and I said, hey, what would you think? And he said, well, I'm kind of surprised you haven't thought of it before. Oh. This is my husband who doesn't come to church, right?
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay. And he said, well, as long as we don't go into debt. He said, you know, sure. And I said, okay. And then I mentioned it to my mother, and she had the same reaction. I'm surprised you haven't thought of it before. I went, whoa. And it was at that point then that I started really seriously considering it. I spoke with Richard. Yeah. I had a meeting with him, and he was so sweet, very encouraging, very supportive. And he encouraged me to reach out to Nicole Eastwood.
Oh, right, yeah.
At that time. Yeah. And I met with her over Zoom about a year ago.
Tell us who she is again.
She is the assistant to the bishop in charge of the candidacy program for people entering into candidacy for the ministry. Yeah. And she and I had an incredible conversation. I got all teary and emotional. And she said, you're not too old. She said, almost all of the seminaries have online programs, and there's money.
Ding, ding,
check, check,
ding.
check.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, I thought, oh my gosh, wow. I think this is something I need to really look at.
Yeah.
So And then Richard had also mentioned to me that somebody else was also interested, and then it came out that it was Linda, and I'll never forget Linda and I standing in the parish hall, looking at each other like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
We're the same age. It all happened at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird, and it had to be the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So we've kind of helped each other out. She then told me, she said, there's going to be an online session with like 6 of the seminaries coming up next week, like an open house. And she sent me the link for that. And so that's where I was introduced to the various options. I sat in on that, and they each went through their online offerings and so on. And it was at that point that I became familiar with United Lutheran Seminary. I sat in on a little session that Deacon Nancy Gables she's the head of their admissions, was leading, and that's how I became familiar with United Lutheran Seminary. And then, long story short, out of all the seminaries, they had the most flexible options in terms of education, because I'm not planning on retiring for another 3 years. I needed something that I could do online that was going to be flexible, that would allow me to continue teaching, and that would also allow me to do this in a way where I wouldn't have to stretch this all out over a period of 6-7 years, right? But to try to get as much under my belt in the 3 years that I have as possible. So that's kind of how that story happened. Wow. In terms of my going back, boy, that was longer than I intended. As I said, my father was a Lutheran minister. He was born and raised in Germany under Hitler. And that's he has his own whole story. But it's not that he found God, because he knew God, but it came from a very secular family. But it was during the bombing of Dresden, and he was in Dresden. His father had passed away, and he was with his mother and his sister. He was 15. And when the bombs were falling around him, he said his first real prayer, which was, "Lord, have mercy on me."
Wow.
And just get me through this. And that was the lightning bolt for him. And from that point on, through the rest of his high school years after the war was over, so that was in 1945, he had a wonderful mentor in high school that encouraged him to read Romans. He said, "I think Paul has a lot to say to you, Manfred." And so he did, and then he entered seminary and so on, and then he's got his whole journey. My mom was an American. They met on a ship as he was returning from a year in Canada and the United States after his studies in Germany, and she was going over on a Fulbright scholarship as an opera singer she was going to study voice in Göttingen, and so they met on the ship.
Oh my gosh.
Long story short, they ended up getting married 4 years later. He was by then a NATO chaplain at Ramstein, and she went over and everything, they got married, they came to the States, and they had their whole journey. But I will say this, the reason I bring my father up is because he is the inspiration for everything for me. He has been such a mentor, role model. He's been kind of like my lodestar, if you will. His work, he had an extremely interesting career in the parish, first in the United States here, went on to get his doctorate in church history at Hartford Seminary, and then we ended up for 5 years in Argentina, where he taught church history at a seminary in Spanish to Argentine seminarians.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was an idyllic life for me. I loved it.
Yeah.
So I was raised on a seminary till the age of 10. He then, for many reasons, came back to the States, taught at Hammer School of Theology at Wittenberg University in Ohio, went back into parish ministry in West Virginia, and then campus ministry at Stanford University, and then went back to Germany, had a church in Berlin on the Berlin Wall for about 4 years, 3-4 years. Our apartment looked into the death strip, which was fascinating. And then he just decided to come back to the United States, had a church, German-American church in New York, in Manhattan. And then he retired to the Poconos and continued serving as an interim, had a little country church and everything until he passed away at the age of 85.
Wow.
So that's my father's journey.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I kind of followed along with all of that. I mean, I lived in Berlin with them for a while after college. I was very involved in the congregation in New York because I was going to NYU. It was part of the reason why they ended up in New York. Lived in the parsonage there, which was amazing. He was also, his area of expertise, in addition to church history, was Latin liberation theology. He had been, and I'll wrap up my dad, the subject of my dad in a second, but he was one of a few Protestant observers invited to the Medellin Conference in 1968 after Vatican II, where Latin liberation theology really came to the fore, which was based in a lot of social justice, and it was really the birth of liberation theology, but it started in Latin America. So he was invited to observe, but became very, as my fathers want to do, became very involved. He was like the secretary for one of the committees, and so he then submitted his notes, and that became part of the major record. So he was recognized around the world actually as a liberation theology scholar, and that was then became his main area of expertise when he was teaching here. I mean, so he's a pretty amazing guy.
No kidding. Oh my gosh.
He was an amazing man, and that's what I grew up with all of that. So when it comes to ministry, after, like I said, I've been teaching, so that's really kind of my background. I mean, I was an actor as well for a little while in New York. But when it comes to faith and discipleship, I was raised kind of asking, what is discipleship and what is our place in the world as servants of God, right? As disciples of God. And what is it that Luther says, you know?
Yeah.
And being a servant in the world. And so I've tried to do that in my life. I feel like in my teaching, I've tried to bring a sense of ministry to that without proselytizing. I will bring my faith up with students. I don't try to force anything on them.
Yeah.
But I've been very upfront and said, you know, my father was a Lutheran minister, and this is my perspective.
Right.
Whenever I've directed a play, there's always been some kind of a message or a purpose beyond just, oh, here's a play, right? I feel like that's kind of been part of my ministry. So I feel like I've been ministering in some way most of my life and trying to live that out. I fail a lot. And so with this call, I have found myself really doubling down and trying to be very conscious of who I am in the world and the work that, you know, that I call myself to do, and the kind of person that I need to be out as the light of Christ. And it's just filled me with such joy this past year. It's just been one of the most joyful years I've had.
You're stepping into the path that you were made to continue.
I hope.
You know, are you familiar with the legend of the Sankofa bird?
No.
Dear friends, Pastor Hammond, Pastor William Hamilton, and Pastor Victoria Hamilton introduced me to a lot of art, things like that. And at one of Pastor Vicky's retreats, she had this crazy-looking goose that had its neck bent completely backward, looking back over its shoulder. And I thought, this is really cool. And I knew it was African art. I said, what is this? What's the symbolism? And basically it is, we look backward on our past to carry into our future those things that are useful. And that's a lousy description. Sorry, Pastor Vicky. put a comment when I post this on Facebook and let me know what it really is supposed to be. But I know that's a basic part of it. And so you were doing that. All of the richness, all of the richness from your upbringing. And you are now just, you've got it in your life's basket. And now you're just kind of putting it all together, and I can just see this golden path going, and God sitting there going, got it now? Here you go.
Yeah. I mean, well, I preached this
amazing.
sermon back in, when that was, that May or something, when Richard and Linda had a meeting, and Richard was like, Pastor Dow was like, hey, could you do the sermon, for the second service, because I need to, and lead this service up until communion. And it's like, sure. So, but that sermon was all about the knock, knock, knock at the door, and I feel like God has been kind of going knock, 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 knock. I mean, all through my life. I mean, the idea of ministry would like pop in and then pop out again. And, who was it? Somebody said, this is a terrible thing to say, that all ministers are frustrated actors. And I said, and I'm a frustrated actor who's becoming a minister.
There you go.
Or an act, yeah, exactly. So, or an actor who's a frustrated minister, kind of doing it the other way around. Because there is a connection between those two. Anyway, so as part of that, I mean, there has just like this, just kind of like pops in. I know my dad was interested in performance as well, but it's just kind of like popped in. There's just like this little crossover. It's like, hey, there's this. Oh, hey, there's that. Oh, hey, there's this. So I think it's always kind of been there. It's just really kind of went last year. And I think I think you're right. I think a lot of my past experiences, including my life in Argentina too, which exposed me to different cultures, to poverty, serious poverty, and social injustice, as well as also living in Mexico too. I mean, I've been exposed to a lot of struggles around the world, and political struggles around the world too. I mean, my father was very involved with social justice in California. I mean, he was marching in some of the early gay pride, marches, and going out and protesting for the farm workers, when with Cesar Chavez. And I mean, so I think that informs a lot of it too. That I've always been very much a person who wants to fight for justice. And if I see an injustice, somebody not being treated fairly, or someone taking advantage of someone who's, weak or incapable of doing something, and someone's trying to bully them, I get very, very passionate about wanting to protect and wanting to care for.
Your experiences in life, you've seen things that most of us aren't even close to.
Yeah.
It's so far removed from our everyday, those people that are desperate for everything. We don't see that.
Yeah.
Or if we do, we step over them and keep walking.
Or we don't notice them. Right? They're there, but we don't notice them. I mean, two things that stand out in my mind were, one, when we were in Mexico and I had a doll. I had a lot of dolls. I was very spoiled in that regard. And we were out, my mom still talks about this, and we were out somewhere and I had a doll, and this Mexican little girl came up and said, "Can I touch your doll?"
Oh.
I was 4.
Oh.
And I, didn't know what to do. And so my mom said, let her touch the doll. And then I was like, why did she want to touch my doll? And my mom said, because she doesn't have any. And that was my first lesson about inequality. Yeah. And that I was a privileged person. I mean, I grew up knowing I was privileged. In Argentina as well. I mean, I had a little girlfriend who lived across the street from me. She came from a middle-class family. She did not go to my school. I went to the private school that was run by the Lutheran Church, and then there was the regular school. They wore white uniforms, we wore blue. I mean, so there was like this distinction.
Yeah.
Right? And so she went to the school with her white uniform, and I went to my school with the blue uniform. Gloria was her name. She had a very nice, it was for the circumstances, they lived pretty well, because there was some real poverty. I did have a friend who was on a scholarship, and I went to her house once, and I remember seeing like the dirt floor and the bare brick walls, and being just, you know, neither one of them would have been allowed to come to my home because they would have seen what they don't have.
Right.
And that was impressed on me at the age of 7, 8, 9 years old. You have benefits. You're living a life that your dear friends are not able to live. And that message. The other memory that sticks out in my mind was when we were in California, and my dad had gotten involved with a group that was helping a Chilean family. This was under Pinochet, the Pinochet regime, which was just horrific. It was just this authoritarian, totalitarian. This was like when all the politics in Latin America were just blowing up. Argentina was living under a junta and everything. Anyway, but we sponsored, our congregation, my dad's congregation, sponsored a Chilean family. He was a professor of some sort, I believe, at a university, and he had a wife and 2 children, and there was a daughter my age, and then there was a little boy, probably my brother's age. And I still remember, I was probably about 14 at the time, preparing to welcome them and trying to think, what are the things they don't have? What are the things that they need? What it is that they are escaping from? And again, this idea that I live this privileged life. There's one other memory, though, going back to Argentina. We had a woman who was basically she would do our laundry. So my mom had 2 quote unquote servants, and one was like the house cleaner, and then Senora Mercedes, who would do the laundry, because the laundry had to be done like with a crank. We had like one of those old-fashioned washing machines, right?
Yeah.
And we cranked it. Okay. So anyway, and we had so much money, it was like, so she had some, and we're helping the economy. So we had this woman, Senora Mercedes, and she would also then kind of keep an eye out for my brother and me. And I loved, she just was so dear. She gave me a gold ring when we left Argentina with my initials inscribed in it, which must have cost her quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
Anyway, she wanted to take me to see Holiday on Ice in Buenos Aires. We were living outside of Buenos Aires, about 30 minutes, in a little area called José Cepaz, which has been subsumed into the metropolitan area. But anyway, and so when I was there in the 1970s, we were under 3 different dictators. So I was there with 2 overthrows of government.
Wow.
And you'd wake up and it's like, oh, the military, went into the plaza and the president was kicked out and the next one was brought in, which was about the extent of what I experienced as a kid in terms of those political overtones.
Yeah.
But for especially the Argentine people, they had to keep their papers with them. So you had something called, we had a cédula, which I guess was our visa. So we had to keep our papers. And as American citizens, we were very protected, by the consulate and the embassy. That was made very clear. But the Argentines themselves, this was in the interim between the 2 Perón governments. So Perón was in exile, and this was before he came back, and then before he died. Anyway, so we were in this interim. And so she wanted to take me to Buenos Aires, and we were standing, waiting for the bus. I must have been about 7, I guess. And we were waiting for the bus, and she went, no tengo mis papeles. I don't have my papers.
Yeah.
Here she is, an Argentine woman with a blonde little American child.
Oh boy.
About to go on a bus to Buenos Aires. And we had to go back to her house so she could get her papeles. And I remember her horror at that. And again, never having experienced that with my parents. So, yeah, I mean, and those are just a handful of experiences that I had growing up that impressed me with privilege and disparity.
So, when are you writing your memoir?
Oh, gosh.
I'm not kidding. I am not kidding.
I don't know. I mean, my parents have done a great job documenting
Andrea,
their
but
stories. Maybe at some point, I don't know.
it could well be time.
Yeah. Well,
Those memories and those stories
well,
are
they're
from
just
your
like
perspective.
these little anecdotes.
Exactly.
You know, they're just anecdotes
Short stories.
of what I experienced. Yeah, and maybe I'll make a note of some of them, and then let me get into the ministry first.
One huge project at a time, please.
Exactly.
Oh,
yeah, I'm
man.
not the greatest writer. My parents are the writers. I'm not the greatest writer. I got to learn how to write a sermon.
So,
Yeah.
holy mackerel, this is just incredible. It's just incredible. And my second question is kind of crazy because you really already kind of answered it, which is, how do you juggle all this? But obviously, God's juggling it for you because He's removing obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
He's got you pointed in the direction.
I hope.
He's put all the people in place that you needed at the time you needed them.
Yes, that's
And He
true.
gave you a partner to walk with you along the way. I
Yeah.
mean, and of course your husband,
Right.
who's an amazing support guy.
Yeah.
And a real sweetheart.
Yeah, he is. I'm the juggling part. We'll find out. I mean, I leave this week to go to Gettysburg for 2 weeks to do a Greek intensive.
Oh boy.
I'm going to live in dorms for the first time in my life.
And what's
for
a
2
Greek
weeks.
intensive like, just for fun?
I have no idea. I mean, it's I've already done studying. I've had to memorize the Greek alphabet, diphthongs, the consonant pairings. I still have to work on the breathing marks and punctuation. That's still my to-do list for this week. I've had to learn how to write in Greek, and then the biggest thing has been dealing with the technology. I had to download a keyboard, and some digital keyboard that will help you type in Greek. But my computer keeps crashing if I don't do it the right way. So I'm just praying that the keyboard works. He says you really just need this to take notes. So I'm like, I hope it works.
See, we have no clue what it's like to have to go to seminary.
No.
My experience with Greek as supporting my husband was we were in a canoe on Como Lake in Minneapolis because he went to seminary in Minnesota, and he was studying for his Greek final.
Okay.
So while he was rowing, he was reciting things to me. And he said, "Is that right?" I said, "I have no clue. It's all Greek to me."
It's all Greek to me, exactly.
But so, yeah.
So
we have
fortunately, we have software now that will
Yes.
do the translating. We will have to memorize 84 words, basic words. It's like words that are used more than, I think, 300 times in the Bible. But I looked at the list, and like the first ones are like and then and God and and Jesus.
You got it.
And then they get progressively more complex as time goes on. We are going to have vocabulary quizzes. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
because you've so beautifully unraveled your story of your journey in getting to this point and what brought you here and how that path seemed very winding, but it was like a tapestry. It was a whole tapestry
way to put it.
of your life.
Yeah.
And all the different threads and the golden threads and the black threads of despair and sadness, and then just incredible experiences. So the last question almost seems silly, but yet when you're talking about God's work and the Holy Spirit, He does have a sense of humor.
He does.
But we don't joke with the Holy Spirit. So my question was, when do you feel the Holy Spirit the closest to you?
I will say, that's a great question. I would say in church. There's a couple places. So in church, definitely the first time that I was behind that altar when I substituted for Pastor Dow, and I guess it was February or January, it was the most powerful experience I've ever had in my entire life. And that includes anything I've done in theater, having my child, the whole 9 yards, standing up there, and I get so emotional, blessing the congregation. And I just was like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. This is so powerful. And you saw me then at the end of the service, that first service, when I recessed and you were standing and back at the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went like this,
Yeah.
and I just burst into tears. And somebody thought I was hot. I hadn't realized that everybody had turned around to look at me.
Yeah.
And that they see me doing this. And I was doing this because it was all I could do to hold myself together. And then the other times I would say a lot is when I'm driving and having conversations with God.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some very frank conversations. I've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
We have some really, really good conversations. Sometimes I get angry. Sometimes I'm begging, and sometimes I'm so thankful.
I've done a lot of fist shaking myself over all these years. And going back to that moment behind the altar, that's very possibly a moment where you were anointed. That was
That's saying a lot. Thank you.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
I know. I mean, it was just, the first thought that I had was, I'm not supposed to be here. This is my dad's place. That was the first little in my head. And then I thought, no, my dad's here with me. And I have felt that. And he's been in my dreams a lot in the last month or so as I get closer to starting the journey. He hasn't been in the last week or so, but a couple weeks ago, I had several dreams in a row where I couldn't understand what he was saying. He was saying something and leaving me a message on a phone, and I couldn't hear it. But it was okay. It wasn't like I was upset by it. So at some point, I'll hear that message. I know.
Maybe it wasn't time.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
The timing is always right.
But no, I definitely feel him with me right now.
Mm-hmm. Going, it's about time. It's about time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
This was really special, Missy. Thank you so much
Just too cool.
for
And
doing this.
I'm going to take my little cell phone. We're doing this on cell phone. Speaking of technology, and do my very best to get it uploaded.
Okay.
I'm not a technical person.
Oh, you do a great job with it.
God has dropped this on me, so he's going to help me get it figured out. But so many blessings, so many prayers for you.
Thank you. I'm going to need them.
This is just astounding to me that this congregation has raised up not one, but two people that God has called to the ministry of Word and Sacrament.
It's crazy. It's a special place.
It is. I've often said.
And I think you and Richard have done so much for us as a congregation to do that, to help us with that.
We came back to love you. He brought us back here full circle to love you. And see what love does?
Yeah.
See what love does. And it's not just us, but it's contagious. Yeah. So pray for Andrea in her journey, and for Dan, who's about to be a clergy spouse.
Yes, and he's got his own struggles with that.
I know.
He's right there, but he's
Have him call me. I tell people I wasn't always married to a pastor, and there's a reason for that. Yeah. So thank you, God's blessings, and we'll be in touch. Why did this stop?